TIFU by trying to impress my girlfriend's parents with homemade lasagna and nearly burning down their house. So this happened last weekend, and I still feel like crawling into a hole every time I remember it. I, 29M, have been dating my girlfriend Emily, 28F, for about a year and a half. Things are serious. So serious, in fact, that I was finally invited to her parents' house for the weekend to meet her mom and dad in a no-pressure, just a casual weekend kind of way. That alone was enough to make me sweat through 3 shirts, but I was determined to make a great impression. Emily's parents live in this picturesque, magazine cover kind of house in a quiet suburb. You know the type, everything smells like lemon polish and there are about 700 candles everywhere for no reason. Her dad is one of those quiet, intense types who cleans his already clean grill and sharpens knives recreationally. Her mom is overly friendly, but with the kind of passive-aggressive energy that lets you know she absolutely judged your shoes the moment you walked in. Anyway, I wanted to do something nice. Emily had told her parents that I cook, which is sort of true. I do cook, but mostly like bachelor meals, stuff that involves one pan and a lot of pre-shredded cheese. But I figured I could level up. I decided I'd cook them my famous lasagna, which until now had only been famous in the sense that I made it twice and neither time gave me food poisoning. So I brought ingredients. Fresh noodles, multiple types of cheese, homemade sauce I spent 4 hours making the night before, and even fresh herbs. I was all in. The plan was to cook Saturday night. We spent the morning antiquing, kill me, and came back mid-afternoon. I got to work in the kitchen while Emily and her parents sat in the living room sipping wine and talking about how well Becky's kids were doing in school. Becky is Emily's sister, who apparently birthed 3 overachievers that collectively won the science fair, invented a new form of compost, and play violin in their sleep. I was determined to compete with Becky, if not in genetics, then at least in bechamel sauce. Things started fine. I chopped garlic, grated cheese, layered noodles like a damn architect. I was in the zone. The oven was preheating. I assembled the lasagna in a glass baking dish that I found in their cupboard. It looked a little old. Like vintage. But I figured if it was in the kitchen, it was fair game. Here's where I fucked up. Apparently, this dish was not oven safe. Or it was oven safe, like 40 years ago. I slid it into the oven and within 5 minutes, bang. The sound was like a gunshot. Everyone screamed. I opened the oven and was immediately hit with a wall of smoke and the smell of something between burnt cheese and broken dreams. The glass dish had exploded. Not cracked, exploded star. Like, shards of glass embedded in the lasagna and all over the oven. Cheese was oozing down like lava. Tomato sauce was splattered everywhere like a crime scene. Emily's dad rushed in with a fire extinguisher like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. I tried to explain but it just came out like, it was supposed to be good, while I stood there covered in ricotta and shame. They spent the next hour airing out the house while I scraped lasagna shrapnel out of the oven. Emily's mom tried to act like it was fine, but she looked like she'd just watched someone break a family heirloom. Which, it turns out, I had. That dish belonged to Emily's grandmother and had survived the move from Italy. That's right. I didn't just ruin dinner, I destroyed a piece of this woman's ancestral legacy. We ended up ordering Thai food. I couldn't even look anyone in the eye. Every sound felt like judgment. Fork clinks? Judgment. Napkin rustle? Judgment. Emily tried to hold my hand under the table and I flinched like I'd been tossed. After dinner, I tried to help clean up, but Emily's dad had taken over the kitchen like it was a federal crime scene. I offered to pay for a new dish, and her mom smiled in that terrifying way people do when they're silently screaming inside and said, "It's irreplaceable, dear. Don't worry about it." That night, I lay awake in Emily's childhood bed, complete with pink sheets and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, while she tried to console me by reminding me that I had at least made the salad before the oven debacle. The salad was bagged Caesar. I had added croutons. That's it. The next morning was the slowest breakfast of my life. Her dad made eggs in total silence. Her mom asked if I liked oatmeal in the kind of tone you'd use for a stray dog you're considering letting into your house. I offered to go out and get everyone coffee and was told, we already have some. Sit down. We left that afternoon. The silence in the car was deafening for a solid hour before Emily finally burst out laughing. Apparently, she found the whole thing hilarious and said her parents were probably just shaken but would get over it. 2 days later, I got a text from her mom that just said, next time, maybe bring cookies, smiley face. I am now known in their house as lasagna guy, and I'm pretty sure I'll never live it down. But hey, at least I didn't start an actual fire. Just an emotional one. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. TIFU by helping my neighbor break into his own house and causing a chain of events that ended with me getting arrested at 3 a.m. in my boxers. This happened a few weeks ago, but I'm just now mentally stable enough to share it. I live in a pretty quiet suburb with the kind of neighbors you wave to but don't actually know. One of them, Greg, not his real name, is a mid-30s guy with a pretty normal vibe. Nothing unusual, just a dude with a lawnmower that works better than mine. We've exchanged words maybe twice, both about trash bins. It all started around 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in bed, lights out, drifting off when I heard a knock at my front door. Not a light knock either, a full-on, horror movie thud thud thud. I threw on a hoodie and went to the door, where Greg was standing looking very stressed. He quickly explained that he'd locked himself out while taking his dog for a walk and his phone was inside. His wife was away visiting family, and he had no spare key hidden. He looked so defeated that my half-asleep self offered to help. This is where the first mistake happened. Now, I'm not a burglar, but I've seen enough YouTube to know the basics of breaking into a suburban home. I figured, hey, back window? Maybe a cracked basement window? We do a lap around his house, and he points to a second-story bathroom window that's half open. He asks if I could boost him up to the roof over his garage so he can climb in. I agree because of course I do, I'm helpful and still kind of groggy. I bring over my stepladder and give him a boost. It takes some struggling, but eventually he gets onto the garage roof. Then he gets up to the bathroom window, wiggles in, and disappears into the house. I feel victorious. I saved the day. I go back home, brush my teeth again for some reason, and get back in bed. I'm asleep maybe an hour when I'm violently woken up by aggressive knocking again. This time, it's not Greg. It's the police. 2 officers, flashlights in my eyes, asking me to come outside. I'm still in my boxers and hoodie, standing barefoot on my porch, half asleep and wildly confused. One officer tells me there was a report of a break-in at Greg's house, and neighbors described a man on a ladder helping someone into a second-story window. I explain the situation. No, that was Greg himself. He locked himself out. I helped him get in. Greg who? The officer asks. Greg. My neighbor. He lives there. He said he was locked out. The officers exchange looks. Then they tell me Greg is out of town. I laugh. I say, no, he's not. He was literally just here. He knocked on my door. They look at me like I've grown a second head and tell me to stay put. One of them radios something in. I start panicking. I try to describe Greg. I point to the house. I explain the whole interaction. 10 minutes later, they handcuff me. They say they found no one inside Greg's house. No signs of forced entry, except the open window. And here I am, in my underwear, the only witness, with no security footage to back me up. I get taken to the station. Still trying to convince them this was all just a misunderstanding, I give them Greg's name and house number and try to explain that I'm just a helpful idiot, not a cat burglar. I spend the next 4 hours in holding, staring at fluorescent lights, wondering what the hell happened. Around 6 a.m., everything flips. Another officer comes in and tells me Greg just called in. Turns out, he'd left town that night to visit his wife and was already 2 hours away when I helped a total stranger break into his house. Yep. The guy I helped? Not Greg. Not even remotely Greg. Just some random dude with a hoodie, a dog, and the most convincing locked-out neighbor story I've ever heard. He knew Greg was out of town and must have been scoping the place. He saw an idiot like me, half asleep and gullible, and spun a story that was just close enough to believable. Police went back to Greg's house and found it had been quietly robbed. Laptop, watch, credit cards, gone. All while I was patting myself on the back for being a good Samaritan. They let me go, obviously. I wasn't charged. But I had to give a full statement, and now I'm listed as a witness in an active burglary investigation. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that several neighbors saw me helping the guy in. A few of them are older, nosy types who now think I'm running some weird late-night B/Andy racket. I get looks. The HOA president sent me a passive-aggressive email about neighborhood safety awareness. Greg himself came by to thank me for trying but also kind of implied I should have known better. To add a final layer of humiliation, my doorbell cam recorded the entire conversation with fake Greg. I watched it back. I was so eager to help. So trusting. So stupid. My wife won't stop calling me the accomplice. I now have an ongoing anxiety disorder whenever anyone knocks on the door after sunset. So yeah. I helped rob my own neighbor. Got arrested in my underwear. And I'm now probably on some internal police bulletin titled "Guy who will let anyone into your house if they smile and bring a dog." TIFU by agreeing to dog sit my boss's dog and accidentally getting both of us arrested. So, a couple months back, my boss, let's call him Dave, approached me with what seemed like a golden opportunity to get in his good graces. He was flying out of town for a 2-week vacation and needed someone to take care of his beloved golden retriever, Murphy. I work in marketing at a mid-sized firm, and Dave is the kind of boss who remembers birthdays, overuses golf metaphors, and talks about his dog more than his kids. So when he asked if I could help, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. I live in an apartment downtown where pets aren't allowed, so Dave said I could stay at his house in the suburbs while he was gone. The place was insane, like, smart everything, wine fridge, rain shower, espresso machine I didn't dare touch. It felt like I was in an Airbnb for someone with taste and zero financial anxiety. And Murphy was a sweetheart, chill, affectionate, never barked. I thought I had scored the easiest 2-week gig ever. The first week went great. I worked remotely, took Murphy on long walks through the neighborhood, watched Netflix on Dave's absurdly large OLED TV. I even started organizing his pantry for fun. Then came the weekend. Saturday night, I invited 2 friends over, Jake and Lena. Nothing crazy, just some drinks, pizza, and maybe a bit of Mario Kart. But Jake brought weed. I didn't see a huge issue, we were in the privacy of a suburban home, not a dorm room. Murphy was snoring under the table, and we were 3 adults minding our own business. Until the neighbor called the cops. Apparently, Dave's next-door neighbor, whom he'd had some drama with over a property line dispute, saw us through the window and thought we were suspicious. When the cops knocked, I opened the door, stoned out of my mind and holding a slice of pizza. Murphy tried to greet them by shoving his whole head between one cop's legs, which did not go over well. They asked for ID. I gave them mine, explained I was watching the house for Dave, and offered to call him. He didn't pick up, he was in Europe. That's when they asked me to step outside. One of them started inspecting the living room, found the half-smoked joint on the coffee table, and called it in. Things escalated quickly. Despite explaining the situation multiple times, I was handcuffed and read my rights for possession. Jake, who had a couple grams in his backpack, also got cuffed. Lena, who was just sipping wine and had nothing on her, got to stay behind with Murphy, who was now completely freaking out and whining at the door. So there I was, in the back of a cop car, high, scared out of my mind, and trying to figure out how I'd explain this to my boss. Meanwhile, Lena was texting me updates about how Murphy had peed on the expensive rug in panic. I was released the next morning with a court summons and a lecture from the arresting officer that felt more like a TED Talk. My friend Jake wasn't as lucky. He had a prior misdemeanor, so he had to call his brother to bail him out. When I got back to Dave's house, Lena looked like she'd aged 10 years. Apparently, Murphy had vomited, pooped on the stairs, and chewed through the corner of a couch cushion. I spent all of Sunday cleaning like a maniac and Googling how to remove weed smell from high-end upholstery. Monday morning, Dave called. He had seen the Ring camera footage of the police showing up. At first, he thought it was a prank. Then he checked his voicemail and found a message from the local police department. I tried to explain. I really did. I told him it was a misunderstanding, that I didn't realize weed laws were still that strict in our county, and that Murphy was safe and fine. He was dead silent for a good 10 seconds before calmly saying, "I'm cutting my trip short. Be out of my house by tomorrow." I haven't made eye contact with him since. I still have my job, surprisingly, but my role on the team has shifted. I'm no longer on the big pitches. I get asked to do a lot of menial stuff now, like organizing spreadsheets and running analytics nobody reads. It's like being slowly benched from your own career. Murphy, by the way, is fine. Dave posted a picture of him a week later with the caption, "Back home where he belongs." The couch, however, was replaced. I recognized the new one from a West Elm ad. I learned a few things from this mess. 1. Never underestimate how fast a mellow night can go sideways. 2. Some suburbs still treat marijuana like it's 2001. 3. When your boss says make yourself at home, they do not mean that at home. And 4. Never dog sit for your boss. TIFU by using my work laptop for a Zoom call while recovering from surgery, so this happened a few months ago, and it still haunts my dreams. I work in IT for a mid-sized software company. We've been hybrid for years now, so Zoom calls are basically the norm. I've always been the reliable guy, never late, always prepared, keeps his camera on, asks good questions, laughs at the boss's jokes. I was the poster child for remote professionalism. That all changed one fateful Tuesday. A week before this incident, I had minor surgery to repair a hernia. Nothing life-threatening, just enough to warrant some time off and a prescription for some very strong painkillers. My manager was super understanding and told me to take it easy, maybe join the Tuesday all-hands meeting if I was feeling up to it, but no pressure. Tuesday morning rolls around, and thanks to a combination of boredom and overconfidence, I decide I'm well enough to attend the Zoom call. I shuffle to my desk in a robe and boxers, pop a painkiller, mistake number 1, and set up my work laptop. I figure I'll just keep the camera on for a few minutes to show I'm alive, then go dark and mute. About 5 minutes before the meeting starts, I realize I haven't had breakfast. The painkiller is kicking in, and I'm starting to feel a little floaty. Not great. So I grab a protein shake from the fridge, down half of it, and come back to my desk. The meeting starts. Camera on. Smiles exchanged. Our CEO, this ex-McKinsey, buzzcut, power walks everywhere kind of guy, starts giving his usual rousing speech about quarterly goals. Somewhere around minute 12, things get weird. I remember looking at my keyboard and wondering why the keys looked like they were made of marshmallow. Then I blinked, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the sound of my phone vibrating violently against the wood floor. It was my coworker Sam. I picked up, and before I could say anything, I heard, "Dude. You need to get off the call." Now. I glance at my screen. My camera is still on. My mic is live. I'm lying in my chair, head tilted back, mouth wide open, snoring loud enough to register seismic activity. That would have been bad enough, but here's where it really goes off the rails. Apparently, during the meeting, I had slumped out of my chair entirely, robed half open, boxers riding dangerously low, one leg propped on the desk like I was posing for some cursed Renaissance painting. And at some point, my laptop, balanced precariously on a stack of books, shifted just enough to tilt the webcam downward. Full view. Everything. Now, I wasn't exactly flashing the entire company, but let's just say the border between SFW and NSFW was uncomfortably blurry. One coworker described it later as intimate adjacent. To make things worse, because I was still technically logged in and unmuted, Zoom had automatically spotlighted my video when it picked up my snoring. So yeah. At least 80 employees saw me passed out, half-dressed, and dead to the world for a solid 2 minutes before someone thought to remove me from the spotlight. But it gets even worse. Our CEO, in his very serious, very no-nonsense voice, had apparently said, "Can someone please check on John? I think he may be experiencing a medical emergency." Multiple DMs were flying. One guy pinged HR. My boss texted my emergency contact, my sister. She then called 911 because, from her perspective, her drugged-up brother might be dying on a work call. So yes. First responders showed up at my apartment. Imagine waking up groggy, with your phone buzzing and pounding at the door, to find 2 EMTs and a very concerned neighbor standing in your hallway. I had to explain the whole thing while still in the robe, which, by now, was completely askew, the protein shake now curdled in a cup beside me, and my laptop flashing Zoom notifications like a nuclear warning system. Needless to say, the all-hands meeting ended abruptly. HR followed up later that day to check on my recovery and offer resources. I didn't get fired, but I did have to sit through a very awkward virtual meeting with HR and my manager where phrases like camera awareness, dress expectations, and reputation management were used more than once. The cherry on top? Someone took a screenshot. No one has admitted it, but it's out there. I know it. You can feel when your dignity has been converted into a JPEG. There's a Slack emoji now of a little guy snoring in a bathrobe. It's not my face, obviously, but it might as well be. People use it anytime someone drops from a meeting or has technical issues. I've since become a cautionary tale in our company onboarding. They don't name me directly, but every new hire now gets a little remote work etiquette slide that includes a bullet point about accidentally broadcasting during sensitive moments. My legacy lives on. I still work there, somehow. And I'll never, ever take another Zoom call while on pain meds again. TIFU by getting caught trying to cheat on my partner, and it turned into a complete disaster. Let me start by saying I absolutely love my partner. We've been together for about 4 years now, and things were going great, until I got this one idea. I know, it's dumb, and I'm honestly ashamed of myself, but it's just one of those moments where your brain goes into autopilot and you make the worst decision of your life. So, here's the context. My partner and I had just gotten through a rough patch. We'd been working a lot, barely had time for each other, and tensions were running high. I'm not saying that excuses what happened next, but it's important to note the environment. For the first time in years, I felt like I was stuck in a routine, and for some idiotic reason, I thought it would be a good idea to do something spontaneous to spice things up. But, being an idiot, I didn't exactly think it through. It started at work. A colleague of mine, let's call him Steve, had been flirting with me for weeks. It was subtle at first, just little comments here and there, compliments about my outfit or how I looked that day. It was harmless enough, right? Except it didn't stay harmless. Steve and I started texting outside of work, just casual stuff at first, but then the texts started getting more personal. He'd compliment me more, ask about my day, and over time, I felt myself actually enjoying the attention. My partner, let's call them Taylor, was always busy with their own stuff, and we didn't have the same level of closeness we once did. So, when Steve was there, telling me I was beautiful, I felt flattered. It was like getting a hit of dopamine that I didn't even know I needed. One day, Steve asked me out to lunch, and it felt innocent enough. Just a casual lunch with a colleague, I told myself. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just casual. Steve made sure to sit too close to me, lingered a little too long, and I was starting to feel conflicted. I knew that if Taylor ever found out, it would be over. But here's the thing about temptation, it messes with your brain. And so, I made a stupid decision. Over the next few weeks, we started meeting for lunch more often, and the conversations began to get flirtier. Then, one evening after work, Steve asked me if I wanted to grab drinks. At this point, I was already in too deep, and I couldn't back out. So, I agreed, thinking it would be the last time, that we'd have a good time, and I'd get this out of my system. But it didn't work that way. We drank too much, and one thing led to another. The next morning, I woke up in Steve's bed, completely freaked out, not sure what had happened or how to fix it. I didn't want to ruin my relationship, but I had just done something that I knew I could never take back. My heart sank. I knew I had messed up in a way I couldn't undo. I spent the entire next day avoiding Steve. I tried to justify it to myself. Maybe it didn't mean anything. Maybe it was a one-time thing. But I knew deep down that I had crossed a line. And the guilt? It was crushing. I couldn't stop thinking about how I was going to explain this to Taylor. The thought of their face when they found out, it made my stomach churn. For the next few days, I tried to keep everything normal. I'd go home to Taylor, act like everything was fine, but my mind was a whirlwind of panic. I kept thinking, what if Taylor knows? What if Taylor's going to leave me? What if they find out in the worst way possible? But I told myself I could keep it hidden, that I could fix everything by pretending it never happened. It's amazing how much we convince ourselves that we can get away with things, isn't it? Then, the worst possible thing happened. One evening, Taylor asked me if I wanted to go through some old photos and videos on their phone. Taylor was in the kitchen, and I was sitting on the couch when I saw it, the notification. It was from Steve. Had a great time last night. Let's do it again soon. My heart stopped. There was no way I could play it off. I froze, and before I could even think of a way to handle it, Taylor came back into the living room with the phone in their hand, the look on their face already telling me they knew something was off. "Who's Steve?" Taylor asked, and in that moment, everything came crashing down. I tried to lie, tried to cover up the truth, but it was clear as day. Taylor's face went pale. They already knew, and I could see the hurt in their eyes. All I wanted to do was curl up in a ball and disappear, but instead, I sat there, trying to make excuses that didn't make any sense. The more I tried to explain, the worse it got. "I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. It was a huge mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please, Taylor, but Taylor cut me off. I don't even know who you are anymore. How long has this been going on?" And that was when it all hit me. I had been lying to the one person I loved the most, and for what? A stupid ego boost? A fleeting moment of validation? I couldn't even remember what Steve's touch felt like anymore. All I knew was that I had just destroyed everything good in my life. Taylor left that night. They stayed with a friend for a few days, and in that time, I went through a roller coaster of emotions. Guilt, anger, self-loathing, it was like I was drowning in my own stupidity. I tried texting, calling, but Taylor wasn't ready to talk. I didn't blame them. I had broken their trust in a way I could never fix. It took a week before Taylor agreed to meet up. We talked for hours. It was one of the most painful conversations I've ever had. Taylor told me how betrayed they felt, how much my actions had hurt them. I tried to apologize, but no words felt big enough. I was ashamed, and I knew that no matter what I said, the damage was done. We're still together, but things are different now. Taylor says they're willing to try to rebuild trust, but it's going to take time. I've promised that I will do whatever it takes to prove I'm worthy of their trust again. I've deleted all contact with Steve, and I've taken full responsibility for my actions. But every day, I think about how easily I could have lost everything. How a moment of weakness turned into a nightmare. So, yeah, I definitely ***ked up. I made one of the worst mistakes of my life, and while I'm grateful Taylor is giving me a chance to make it right, I will never forget how close I came to losing the person I love the most because of a stupid decision. Lesson learned: temptation is real, but the consequences are much, much worse. And I'll never let my guard down again. TIFU by trying to impress my girlfriend with a romantic dinner and ended up starting a small fire in my kitchen that nearly destroyed everything. So, I've been dating my girlfriend for about 6 months now, and we're at that stage in the relationship where everything feels amazing, but I'm still trying to impress her with grand gestures. She's always been super supportive, encouraging me to try new things and push myself out of my comfort zone, which is great. But at the same time, she has a refined palate. She can cook like a 5-star chef and has a strong appreciation for good food. I, on the other hand, can barely boil water without somehow messing it up. One day, I was scrolling through Pinterest, which, by the way, I am convinced is the most dangerous place for a guy like me, and I stumbled upon a recipe for a fancy dinner that seemed relatively easy. I'm talking about a homemade 3-course meal with a gourmet steak, a side of mashed potatoes with truffle oil, and a decadent chocolate mousse for dessert. I thought, yeah, I can totally pull this off. How hard can it be? Spoiler alert, it was very hard. I immediately started planning the whole thing. I knew my girlfriend had a stressful week at work, so I wanted to surprise her with a home-cooked meal. She's mentioned a few times how she loves a good steak, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to show her that I'm not completely hopeless in the kitchen. I figured I'd make her feel special and show her I care by doing something outside of my comfort zone. I got all the ingredients I needed, prepped everything, and set the date. My girlfriend would come over after work, and I would have the whole meal ready for her. I spent hours looking up cooking techniques, watching videos on YouTube, and practicing how to sear a steak without burning it. I even tested the truffle oil on some regular mashed potatoes just to make sure I could handle the flavors. I practiced making the mousse as well, but after a few attempts, I learned that my version of a chocolate mousse was more like a chunky chocolate soup. That was a setback, but I figured it was better to fail in private than to have her witness my cooking disasters, right? The day of the dinner arrived, and I was feeling nervous but confident. I spent the whole afternoon preparing, chopping vegetables, seasoning the steak, and making sure everything was just right. The mashed potatoes were perfectly creamy, and the chocolate mousse finally came together in a way that didn't look like a liquid disaster. Everything was going according to plan, and I was feeling good about myself. Maybe I could actually pull this off. As I set the table and lit some candles to create a nice atmosphere, my girlfriend texted me saying she was on her way. Perfect timing. I quickly threw the steak on the grill, which, by the way, I was using for the first time. I had only used it for burgers and hot dogs before, so this was uncharted territory. But I told myself it would be fine. After all, how hard could it be to grill a steak? Well, I learned the hard way that I have zero clue how to control the temperature of a grill. I had the steaks cooking, but I wasn't really sure if they were rare, medium, or well done. At one point, I noticed smoke starting to rise from the grill, and in a panic, I tried to adjust the temperature. But instead of lowering the heat, I accidentally turned the flame up higher, and that's when things took a turn for the worse. The next thing I knew, the steak was not only burnt, but the fat had started dripping onto the flames, which were now licking up the sides of the grill. Panic set in. I tried to move the steak, but it was stuck. The smoke was billowing, and the kitchen smelled like burnt rubber. I could hear my girlfriend's car pulling into the driveway, and I was about to lose it. I wasn't ready for her to see the disaster unfolding. I grabbed the steak with tongs and moved it off the grill, but now there was an actual fire inside the grill. I didn't have a fire extinguisher, because who thinks to buy one when you're trying to impress someone with your cooking? Instead, I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a wet dish towel. I figured I could smother the flames with it. But of course, instead of putting out the fire, I accidentally made it worse. The towel caught fire, and I had a flaming towel in my hand, which, let me tell you, is not something I had ever planned on experiencing. In a panic, I threw the towel into the sink and turned on the water, but it wasn't enough to stop the fire from spreading. At this point, there was smoke filling the kitchen, and I could hear my girlfriend knocking on the door, probably wondering why I hadn't answered her texts. I could only imagine what she would think when she walked in and saw me, standing in front of a kitchen filled with smoke, holding a fire extinguisher I had found under the sink, because I had no idea where it was stored before this moment, and just generally failing at life. I ran to the door and let her in. Her eyes went wide as she took in the situation, me standing in front of a smoldering grill, the kitchen covered in smoke, the remnants of my burnt meal scattered across the counter. She immediately asked if I was okay and if I needed help. At that point, I was beyond embarrassed, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I just mumbled something like, "Well, I tried to make you dinner." She chuckled and, to my relief, didn't seem angry or upset. Instead, she walked over, wrapped her arms around me, and said, "Well, at least you tried." She even tried to salvage the situation by offering to help clean up, which was sweet of her. We ended up ordering takeout from a local restaurant that we both loved, and while the evening didn't go as planned, we still had a great time. Honestly, I'm not sure how she didn't laugh in my face, but she kept her cool and even told me it was one of the most memorable dates we'd ever had. We ended up sitting on the couch, eating pizza, and laughing at the whole situation, and she promised that next time we'd cook together. Which, knowing my cooking skills, may be in the very distant future. But hey, at least I learned that a romantic gesture doesn't have to be perfect to be appreciated. Sometimes, it's just about the effort. The moral of the story: don't try to impress your significant other with a fancy dinner if you don't know what you're doing in the kitchen. And definitely buy a fire extinguisher before you even think about grilling anything. TLDR, tried to impress my girlfriend with a fancy dinner, set the kitchen on fire, and nearly ruined the evening. She was cool about it and we ended up ordering pizza. TIFU, by accidentally live streaming my first prostate exam to my entire company. So, I, 34M, work in IT for a mid-sized software company that recently adopted a hybrid work model. I'm one of the few who still comes into the office every day because I prefer the dual monitors, the quiet, and the free snacks. Most of my colleagues work from home and we use Microsoft Teams for all our meetings, chats, and general collaboration. Now, I'm not shy about health stuff. In fact, I'm very much in the normalize talking about your health camp. I grew up in a family where we discussed everything, from bowel movements to blood pressure, at the dinner table. So I had no issue booking my very first prostate exam when my doctor recommended it. I figured I'd just knock it out during my lunch break. Here's where the screw-up begins. I'd scheduled the exam on a Tuesday, knowing my calendar was light. The only thing on it was a recurring company-wide Teams call, but I hadn't attended it in months. It was usually just department heads sharing updates and me pretending to listen while checking emails. So I head to the clinic. To save time, I brought my work laptop. I figured I could check Slack or emails while in the waiting room. What I didn't realize was that before leaving the office, I had been fiddling with Teams settings for a different project and had accidentally set my webcam and mic to always be on by default if a meeting started and I was invited. Combine that with the fact that I was screen sharing something earlier and forgot to turn that off too. Now, remember how I said the Tuesday meeting was on my calendar? Yeah, someone decided to pull me into it that week for some quick IT input. I never saw the notification. So, I'm sitting in the exam room, pants folded neatly over the chair, chatting casually with the nurse. My laptop is open on the counter because I'd just replied to an email. The doctor walks in, cheerful guy, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. He asks me to lie on my side, knees up, and starts explaining the process. Again, I'm not shy, so I joke right back. And that's the moment when, unbeknownst to me, my laptop camera and microphone come alive. The 60 or so people in the company-wide meeting are suddenly treated to a widescreen, high-definition view of me bent over on the exam table while my doctor, with a gloved hand, explains in great detail the importance of regular prostate screenings. His voice is crystal clear. I'm just going to apply a little lubricant now. You might feel some pressure. Apparently, the screen was split, my rear view on one half, and a shared tab of our Jira dashboard on the other. One side showed backlogs, the other showed my actual backlog. The kicker? I only found out after the exam. The doctor finishes up, I get dressed, grab my laptop, and see I have 37 missed Slack messages, 4 missed calls, and an email titled urgent, your camera is on. My heart drops. I tap into Teams and the first thing I see is a chat message from my boss, bro, turn off your cam. Please. For the love of God. I immediately close the app, face flushed, stomach doing flips. I scroll through the messages and see a mix of horror, confusion, and, somehow, encouragement. One person wrote, honestly, brave of you. More men should normalize prostate health. Another, nice form. And my favorite, this is why I keep a post-it over my webcam. I didn't know what to do. I considered quitting. Walking into traffic. Becoming a hermit in the woods. But instead, I did what any mature adult would do. I turned off all notifications, closed my laptop, and sat in my car in complete silence for 45 minutes. The next day, I came into the office early to avoid the walk of shame. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would blow over. It did not. There were sticky notes all over my monitor. Backend dev, full stack, you're really integrated into the system now. My mousepad had been replaced with a latex glove. My coffee mug said, ask me about my prostate. But weirdly, no one was mean. It was more, celebratory mockery? Like I'd unintentionally become a meme, but one with a health-positive message. Someone even made a sticker, I survived the stream. Later that week, HR called me in. I was terrified I was about to be fired, but nope. They wanted me to be the spokesperson for a new Wellness Week campaign they were planning. They thought my incident had sparked healthy conversations and they admired my vulnerability. So now I'm on posters in the break room with a thumbs up and the slogan, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Every time I walk by it, I want to curl up and die. But hey, at least now everyone in the company is booking physicals. The IT team has also updated our default settings so that camera and mic permissions are always off unless manually toggled. You're welcome, I guess. TIFU by accidentally stealing my boss's dog and almost getting arrested for dognapping. This happened last weekend and I'm still cringing so hard that I might fold into a black hole. For context, I work at a small but successful architecture firm, and my boss, Sarah, is a high-powered, no-nonsense type who drives a Tesla and wears heels sharp enough to puncture tires. She's cool, intimidating, and owns a Pomeranian named Pickles, who has his own Instagram account with 14K followers. Yes. A dog. With more followers than me. So Saturday rolls around and I'm recovering from a particularly savage hangover when I get a text from Sarah asking if I'm still good to dog sit for Pickles while she takes a quick trip out of town. The thing is, I had absolutely no recollection of agreeing to this. I scroll back through my texts and sure enough, 3 weeks ago, while tipsy at the office happy hour, I'd enthusiastically volunteered to take Pickles for the weekend. My exact words were, OMG, yes, I love dogs, I will treat Pickles like a prince. I don't even like small dogs. But I can't back out now. So I pull myself together, chug some water, and Uber over to her apartment. She hands me Pickles, a tote bag of dog supplies, a list of dietary restrictions longer than most people's resumes, and then she's gone. I take Pickles back to my place and the first few hours go okay. He's bougie, yappy, and refuses to walk on grass, but whatever. He's manageable. That night, things get weird. Around 2 a.m., I take Pickles out for his nightly walk. I live near a park and decide to go a little farther than usual, figuring the fresh air will help with my still lingering hangover. There's a guy about half a block ahead of me walking what looks exactly like Pickles, same caramel fluffball look, same pink rhinestone leash, even the same tiny strut like he owns the block. Now, Pickles starts losing his damn mind. Barking, growling, pulling at the leash like this other dog owes him money. So I pick him up, calm him down, and we go the other direction. The next morning, I wake up to chaos. There are texts, missed calls, and voicemails from Sarah that go from "Hey, just checking in," to "Call me now, something is wrong." My heart rate spikes. I call her. She answers with, "Where the hell is my dog?" Now, I'm staring at Pickles, who is currently wearing a miniature robe and sipping, trying to chew, the straw of a puppuccino. "He's right here?" I say. "No," she says, and then sends me a picture. It's Pickles. The real Pickles. He's in her car, on her lap. Tail wagging. Happy. Not with me. At this point, I feel my brain physically short-circuit. I look at the dog in my apartment. Who the hell is this? Apparently, when I went to the park, I accidentally scooped up the wrong Pomeranian. The guy walking ahead of me? Turns out he went into a gas station and tied his dog outside for 2 minutes. I guess I confused the two dogs in the chaos, and somehow walked off with his. Worse, I never noticed. The dogs looked that similar. Sarah had decided to come home early and found Pickles safe in her building with the concierge, who had taken him in after he wandered in alone. The key fob in the tote bag let him into the building, and the front desk recognized him from his Instagram. They thought maybe he had escaped. Now it looked like I had stolen some random person's Pomeranian. As I'm processing all of this, there's a knock at my door. It's the police. Apparently, the guy whose dog I unknowingly took had gone full Liam Neeson. He called the cops, filed a report, even posted on the neighborhood Facebook group. People were on high alert for a pomnapper. I opened the door holding the imposter Pickles and immediately tried to explain. The officer, thank God, had a sense of humor but was also very much not amused. After showing texts from Sarah, proof that I thought I had her dog, and confirming with both Sarah and the actual dog owner, they let me off the hook. Technically, I returned the dog in perfect health and gave him a luxury weekend with artisanal food and a memory foam bed, so the guy didn't press charges. Still, I was nearly arrested for dognapping because I can't tell one pampered fluffball from another. Sarah, to her credit, has been shockingly chill about the whole thing. She even joked about how this would be a great plot for a rom-com. The guy whose dog I took. Less amused. Though I did send him home with a huge gift basket, a Starbucks gift card, and a handwritten apology note signed by Faux Pickles. The worst part? The fake Pickles now follows me on Instagram. His name is Muffin. He's still mad. And Sarah made me promise never to dog sit again. Hey, friends. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. TIFU by being the hero dad at my kids' school play and traumatizing an entire auditorium. So this happened a couple weeks ago, but I'm only just now emotionally ready to talk about it. I, 38 am a pretty hands-on dad. I have a 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, who's the kind of kid that's always covered in glitter glue and asking me to make costumes out of cereal boxes. She's great. Her school announced that they were going to do a spring play, some kind of modern retelling of classic fairy tales. Sophie got cast as the big bad wolf, and I was beyond proud. Not only was she getting a lead role, but she was excited. She wanted to go all in, and like the overenthusiastic dad I am, I said, "Let's make your costume the best one there." That's where the problems started. I'm a graphic designer and do cosplay as a hobby, so I have tools, skills, and the misguided confidence of a man who once turned a refrigerator box into a moving Optimus Prime for Comic-Con. Sophie and I designed a wolf costume that looked like it stepped out of a Pixar film. Articulated jaws, LED eyes, because why not, and realistic fur. I spent a whole weekend brushing and gluing. It looked amazing. Too amazing. Dress rehearsal came and went. The kids were mostly cardboard and construction paper. Sophie looked like she wandered in from a different production, or a horror movie. A few teachers gave me a look, but no one said anything, so I figured we were good. Now, picture this. It's the night of the play. The auditorium is full. Every parent is armed with an iPhone. I'm front row, ready to record my little star. The play starts, a charming mess of forgotten lines and mispronounced dialogue. Kids bumping into each other like Roombas. It's adorable. Then comes Sophie's big entrance. She's supposed to sneak out from behind a cardboard tree and growl a little before delivering her line about blowing down the house. But she doesn't just sneak out. She pounces like she's in a Broadway adaptation of The Revenant. The jaw clacks open with a sharp snap. The LED eyes flicker red. A group of kindergartners literally scream. One kid runs off stage crying. Another freezes midline like she's been turned to stone. The parents laugh nervously. I'm still filming, proud of my little method actress. But then Sophie starts to howl, a deep, guttural, terrifying sound we had practiced at home, inspired by YouTube videos of actual wolves. She nails it. Unfortunately, it echoes off the walls like something from The Exorcist. A mom 2 rows behind me mutters with the F*******. A dad whispers, "Why does it have eyes?" The teacher playing narrator tries to push the story along, but the kids are all clearly shaken. When Sophie tries to huff and puff, her wolf head's jaw gets stuck open. She starts panicking. The mechanism had jammed, and now she's clawing at her face, trying to pull off a semi-realistic wolf head while crying and yelling, "It's stuck. It's stuck." At this point, a teacher runs on stage to help her while another closes the curtain. It's chaos. The audience doesn't know if this is still part of the show. A few more kids are crying. One little boy yells, "The wolf ate Sophie." I run backstage. Sophie's sobbing, half out of the costume, face red and wet and fur stuck to her cheeks. I pull off the head and hug her while apologizing to every teacher in sight. The principal shows up, a stern woman who looks like she's survived 30 years of elementary school warfare, and pulls me aside. She's professional but clearly trying to suppress fury. She says, "Next time, please clear costume designs with staff in advance." I nod. I apologize. I want to crawl into a hole and die. The rest of the play is delayed 20 minutes. They eventually restart, but Sophie refuses to go back out. I don't blame her. The big bad wolf was rewritten on the spot to have gone on vacation and replaced with a friendly narrator squirrel, played by a kid wearing a fuzzy hoodie and the 1,000-yard stare of someone drafted into war at intermission. Afterward, other parents avoided eye contact with me. One dad clapped me on the shoulder and whispered, "My kid's going to be talking about this in therapy, but hey, great craftsmanship." Another mom sent a group text about how we should have a parent costume day to encourage creativity. I knew it was aimed at me. I deserved it. Sophie didn't talk to me the entire drive home. Eventually, after she calmed down, she asked if we could make a less scary costume next time. I agreed. We hugged. Then she asked if we could still keep the wolf head. She wanted to scare people on Halloween. So, I guess that's a win. TIFU. By accidentally joining a cult because I thought it was a gym a few months ago, I decided I needed to turn my life around. I'd been working remotely, gained what I can only describe as an alarming amount of work-from-home weight, and was feeling disconnected from society. My social life had withered down to occasional texts and more time than I'd like to admit yelling at fictional characters on Netflix. So one day, after stepping on the scale and watching it flash a number I hadn't seen since college, the wrong kind of nostalgia, I made a choice. I was going to get fit. I was going to get social. I was going to join a gym. I found a place nearby on Google Maps. It had a sleek website, no membership fees listed. First red flag, I know, but lots of smiling people in matching gear, group classes, motivational slogans. It didn't look like a traditional gym, but it had that CrossFit meets lifestyle brand vibe. Let's call it Ascend Human Performance Center for the purposes of not being sued. The pictures showed ropes, tires, and extremely fit people with impossibly white teeth. The tagline? Transcend limits. Ascend to your true self. Corny, but I figured, hey, they're into it. Good for them. I filled out a form online and got a call within the hour from someone named Jace. Jace had a voice so enthusiastic it made me suspicious he was a robot, but he invited me in for a free initiation class, which I assumed was some sort of orientation. I showed up in my Target workout gear to a building that looked less like a gym and more like a minimalist art gallery. White walls, soft ambient music playing in the lobby, and a burning smell that I later realized was sage. A very tall man wearing all white and a necklace made of polished stones greeted me. This was Jace. He offered me clarity water, cucumber, lemon, and something called shungite, and asked me to remove my shoes and expectations. I should have left. But I was so deep in my yes-man self-improvement arc that I ignored every signal and followed Jace into a large, circular room lit by candles, where about 20 people were sitting on mats. Not workout mats. Meditation mats. Before I could ask when we were going to do burpees or deadlifts, the room went silent. A woman walked in, dressed in what I can only describe as space priestess attire, flowing white robes, metallic belt, barefoot. Everyone stood up and began a chant. Not a cool chant. Not a sports chant. A hauntingly slow one that sounded like a Buddhist hymn in a TED Talk had a baby. I panicked. I figured, maybe this was just a warm-up. Like yoga, but interpretive? I stayed. I was curious, and also I didn't know how to leave gracefully without stepping over someone mid-chant. Then the priestess, who introduced herself as Elora, began to speak about the journey through planes of exertion and how sweat purges the ego. We did some very light stretching. A few push-ups. Then we laid down for 30 minutes while she talked about unleashing primal truth. Then people cried. Loudly. Like, not teary-eyed emotional cries. Howls. Sobbing. One guy was shaking on the floor and whispering, "I see it. I see it." At this point, I thought, okay. Maybe I joined some kind of spiritual fitness program. I started plotting my escape. But then Elora looked directly at me, I swear, directly into my soul, and said, "The new vessel has questions. Let them be still and answers shall rise." Everyone looked at me. I did the only thing I could think of. I nodded solemnly like I knew exactly what was going on. After the class, people came up and hugged me. One woman pressed her forehead to mine and whispered, "You've arrived at last." I wanted to tell her I arrived from a 2003 Honda Civic and was just here to get my core in shape, but I didn't have the heart. Or the nerve. Then came the enrollment. I was taken to a softly lit room where a man named Malric, bald, intense eyes, smelled like frankincense, explained that to truly ascend, I would need to commit to the path. This involved a monthly energy contribution of $450, fasting once a week, and attending 5 sessions a week, one of which involved silent walking in the woods wearing blindfolds. He handed me a contract. A contract. Printed in gold ink. I told them I needed to think about it. Malric gave me a long, unnerving hug and whispered, "Ego fears truth. Let it die slowly. Then he handed me a raw beet and said it was my first gift. I bolted. I speed-walked in socks until I got to the lobby, grabbed my shoes, and ran. I didn't even fully tie them. I got into my car with the beet in my hand, tossed it onto the passenger seat like it was radioactive, and sat there in silence for a solid 10 minutes. The next day, I got a voicemail from Jace. It was 5 minutes long. He said my energy had stirred the circle, and that the other vessels were asking about me. He urged me to return before my awakening window closed. I didn't call back. I blocked the number. But the texts kept coming from different numbers. You are being missed. Your shadow self still clings. You were so close. I ended up changing my phone number. Here's the kicker. 2 weeks later, I ran into someone wearing an Ascend Human Performance hoodie at Whole Foods. He looked at me, did a subtle bow, and said, "The vessel still breathes. When you are ready, we will open the gate." I dropped my basket. I left the store. I've never been back to that Whole Foods. Anyway, I joined Planet Fitness. Say what you will about purple walls and lunk alarms, but at least no one there tries to exercise my ego or hand me a beat. TIFU by accidentally leading my boss to believe I'm a secret genius, and now I'm in too deep. Let me preface this by saying I am very, very average. I graduated college with a 2.7 GPA. I work in a mid-sized software company doing basic front-end web development. I like my job, I like my coworkers, and I fly under the radar by design. I'm not the guy who speaks up in meetings. I'm not the guy with wild ideas. I'm the guy who does what he's told and clocks out at 5 o'clock. This all changed because of a muffin. 3 weeks ago, it was someone's birthday. Office tradition dictates that the birthday person brings in muffins. I was zoning out at my desk, eating one of these muffins, when I heard my boss, let's call him Carl, ranting about how our internal search function still sucked. Our website has this internal tool that lets employees search for documents, notes, emails, whatever. And it's horrible. It gives you irrelevant results, it's slow, and the UI looks like it was designed in 1997. Carl storms into our pod and says, "Seriously, why is this still broken? Can someone fix this already?" Now, I had no intention of volunteering. But mid-muffin, I got a blueberry chunk stuck in my throat. I started coughing hard, flailing for my water bottle, and in the commotion, Carl noticed me. He pointed and said, "Great. Thank you, Derek." I knew someone would step up. I tried to object, still half choking, but my teammates clapped. Carl clapped. Everyone thought I had bravely volunteered to fix the search function. I hadn't spoken up in 3 meetings, and now I was suddenly Mr. Initiative. I didn't have the guts to correct them. So I figured I'd poke around the search function code, make some small tweaks, and just tell Carl it was optimized. But the code, it was written by demons. Pure spaghetti. 3 different frameworks stitched together by a madman. I wanted to quit right there. But I also didn't want to admit that I wasn't actually trying to be helpful. So I stayed late that night. And the next night. I Googled tutorials. I asked ChatGPT things like how to make internal search not terrible. I even posted anonymously on Stack Overflow. I cobbled together some open-source components, rewrote parts of the search logic, and after a week of Frankenstein-ing it all together, it worked. It actually worked. Not perfect, but way better than before. Results were relevant. It was faster. It even looked decent. Carl loved it. He called me into a meeting with the CTO. They asked me how I did it. I panicked and said, just basic relevance ranking with some NLP tweaks. Which was technically true, except I didn't mention that most of those tweaks came from copy-pasting blog posts and feeding them into AI tools until something stopped breaking. Then came the real disaster. Carl announces in an all-hands meeting that I am now leading a search optimization task force. I am getting a team. A team. of actual engineers. Smart ones. People who've been here longer than me. People who will realize very quickly that I'm about as qualified to lead a dev team as a bag of potatoes is to run a marathon. First meeting happens. They're all looking at me like I have answers. I don't. So I just start parroting buzzwords. We need to improve semantic indexing and leverage vector embeddings for smarter retrieval. They nod. I think I'm getting away with it. Week 2, one of the engineers, Priya, pulls me aside and asks what our embedding strategy is. I stare at her like she just asked me how to perform brain surgery. I stammer something about contextual windows and she says, "Got it," and walks away. At this point, I'm fully living a lie. Every day I wake up with a pit in my stomach. I've started dreaming in acronyms. I have a bookmarked list of AI tools, GitHub repos, and technical blogs that I study like a med student before boards. I'm managing to stay just barely ahead of the team's questions by learning everything 30 minutes before each meeting. But today it blew up. CTO invites me to present our progress to the board. The board. I am not qualified to be in the same room as these people. I try to decline. Carl says, "Derek, stop being humble. You're brilliant." So I build the prettiest PowerPoint I've ever made. I use every piece of jargon I know. I throw in charts. I show a demo. And it works. I think I've survived. Until one of the board members says, "Can you walk us through how you fine-tuned the transformer models for our internal corpus?" Silence. Every neuron in my brain is screaming. I have no idea what this question even means in this context. I am about to confess everything when Priya, bless her soul, jumps in and says, "We used a pre-trained BERT variant with domain adaptation on our document set, then used cosine similarity over vectorized queries." The board nods. The moment passes. The meeting ends. Carl claps me on the back and says, "See? You're our secret weapon." I am now in charge of a company-wide AI initiative. People are sending me resumes. I have 200 LinkedIn connection requests. I just wanted a muffin. And I'm terrified that one day, someone is going to ask me to actually explain how cosine similarity works and my only response will be, "It's like triangles?" So yeah. TIFU by coughing on a muffin and accidentally getting promoted into a role I have no business being in. I'm currently building a tutorial series for myself just to keep up the charade. But hey. At least the search function works now. TIFU by pretending to know Spanish and accidentally joining a drug smuggling operation. Let me preface this by saying I don't speak Spanish. At all. Maybe I can order a beer, ask for the bathroom, and say gracias with a passable accent, but that's it. The rest is a mosaic of Duolingo lessons I half-assed during quarantine and whatever I absorbed from working in kitchens. This story starts 2 months ago when my friend Alex told me about an opportunity to go to Mexico for 2 weeks with a group of people doing a sort of cultural exchange. Basically, help out at a community center during the day, explore local towns, and practice your Spanish. Alex vouched for the group leader, and it sounded like the kind of wholesome, Instagrammable experience I needed after a rough breakup and an even rougher tax season. I signed up and flew to Mérida with 8 others, most of whom actually spoke Spanish to some degree. I didn't want to look like the odd one out, so I did what any insecure 30-year-old man with a fragile ego would do. I faked it. I didn't pretend I was fluent or anything. I just smiled, nodded, threw in the occasional si claro or perfecto and let others do the talking. It worked for the most part. The community center staff spoke slowly and were used to working with foreigners, so I mostly got by just sweeping floors, painting murals, and passing out supplies to kids. Then, midway through the trip, something changed. One night, we were at a bar in town, and Alex introduced me to a guy named Mateo. Tall, charming, fast-talking. He worked with some kind of logistics company that moved goods across the Yucatan. He and Alex got along quickly, talking in rapid-fire Spanish that I couldn't follow. Then Alex turned to me and said, "Hey, Mateo needs help tomorrow. Some delivery thing. You in?" I assumed it was related to the community center, maybe moving donated furniture or supplies. I said sí, claro, like a moron. The next morning, Mateo picked me up in a beat-up gray van with tinted windows and a cracked windshield. He gave me a big smile, clapped me on the back, and said something I didn't catch. I laughed and nodded like an idiot. We drove for 2 hours, stopping only at gas stations where he bought packs of gum and paid in cash, often giving the attendants weird handshakes. At one point, he pulled over, opened a hidden compartment under the floor of the van, and showed me bricks of something wrapped in plastic and tape. I swear I thought it was cheese. Like local cheese, maybe for restaurants. Mateo said a bunch of stuff rapidly in Spanish. The only word I caught was queso. I said, "Oh. Queso. Sí," and gave him a thumbs up. He beamed. It wasn't until we crossed a military checkpoint that I realized I'd made a massive mistake. Mexican military checkpoints are not like US ones. Guys with rifles, dogs, and mirrored sunglasses. They pulled us over and started tapping the van with batons. Mateo got out, handed over documents, smiled, and chatted with the officer. Then one of the soldiers opened the hidden compartment. He didn't look surprised. He looked bored. He poked one of the bricks with a knife. A little white powder spilled out. Reader, it was not cheese. Everything went from meh to oh no in 30 seconds. I started sweating bullets. I don't even smoke weed. I'm the kind of guy who double-checks if Tylenol is past expiration. My only experience with cocaine was watching Narcos on Netflix. Mateo, cool as ever, waved a piece of paper and said something that included permiso and aduana. The soldier grunted and waved him through. Just like that. I didn't breathe for the next 15 minutes. Once we were past the checkpoint, Mateo clapped me on the shoulder and laughed. I nervously laughed too, still not 100% sure if I was now a mule or a patsy. We delivered the queso to a gated property where 3 guys with pit bulls took it out of the van. They handed Mateo a thick envelope. He handed me a can of Fanta and a sandwich. We drove back in silence, mostly because I was too shaken to speak and too scared to try my bad Spanish. He dropped me off at the community center like nothing had happened. The worst part? Alex was waiting for me and said, "So? Mateo said you were a natural." I stared at him, then muttered, "Yeah. Real smooth." I wanted to come clean. I wanted to call someone. But I was in a foreign country, with no idea who Mateo actually worked for, and a passport that still had 10 days left before my return flight. So I kept my mouth shut and spent the next week aggressively cleaning paintbrushes and avoiding eye contact with everyone. When I finally got back to the US, I told my roommate the story. He stared at me, then said, "Dude. You accidentally joined a cartel." I didn't sleep that night. I did Google Mateo's name and found nothing. No social media, no LinkedIn, no photos. Just a blank space where a person should be. I haven't told Alex. I'm not sure if he knew what was going on, or if he was just another dumb gringo caught in the middle. All I know is, I now have an irrational fear of both cheese and tinted vans. Moral of the story, don't pretend to speak a language you don't. You might end up accidentally transporting cocaine across a military checkpoint in Mexico while saying "sí queso" like an absolute jackass. TIFU by pretending to be fluent in Japanese to impress my girlfriend's dad. So this happened a few months ago, but I'm still dealing with the fallout. A little background, I, at 28M, have been dating my girlfriend Yuki, 27F, for almost 3 years. She's Japanese American, born and raised in the US, but her parents are first-generation immigrants and very traditional. Her dad, in particular, is a man of few words, serious demeanor, and intense eyes that feel like they can spot BS from 3 miles away. We'd met a few times briefly, me being polite, him nodding silently, but we'd never had a real conversation. Until now. A few months back, Yuki told me her parents invited us to a family dinner. "My dad wants to get to know you better," she said, which immediately triggered my fight-or-flight response. Yuki is fluent in Japanese, and she sometimes chats with her parents in it, especially her dad, who's more comfortable in Japanese than English. Me, being the idiot that I am, remembered how during our early dating phase, I'd offhandedly mentioned I used to study Japanese. Which was true, technically. I did 2 semesters of Japanese in college. That was 8 years ago. I could still maybe count to 10 and ask where the bathroom is, but that's about it. But Yuki took that little kernel and ran with it. "He was really impressed when I told him you know Japanese," she said. "He said he wants to speak with you in Japanese tonight." I panicked. But instead of being honest, I said something that haunts me to this day: "Sure, I'll brush up before then." This dinner was in 3 days. In 3 days, I tried to cram as much Japanese into my brain as possible. Duolingo, YouTube, old college notes I somehow still had in a dusty folder. I went full Weeb Rocky montage. But as anyone who's tried learning Japanese knows, that language is not something you can master in 72 hours. Still, I convinced myself I could fake it. Worst case, I'd smile and nod, toss in some high S and so desu any S and pray for mercy. We get to the house. I'm sweating through my undershirt. Her mom is lovely, greets me in English, gives me a hug. Her dad? Silent. Just gives me a look that says, "Don't embarrass yourself." We sit down. Her dad cracks open a bottle of sake. He pours me a glass. Then he leans forward and says, in a calm but clear Japanese, "So, I hear you speak Japanese." My mouth was already full of sushi, so I nod. He smiles, and proceeds to launch into a rapid-fire monologue about, I'm guessing, his job? Hobbies? War stories? I had no idea. All I picked up was watashi, shigoto, and daigaku. I think he mentioned something about working at a university? So I go with my master plan. Smile. Nod. Throw in a so desu eni here, a naruhodo there. He pauses. And then he asks me a direct question. I freeze. I have no idea what he said. But everyone is looking at me now. Her dad. Her mom. Even Yuki, who knows the truth but clearly wants to see how far I'll go. So I take a sip of sake, clear my throat, and with all the confidence of a man about to walk into traffic, I say, hi. Tabitai desu. Which means, yes. I want to eat. Her dad stares. There's a silence so thick you could cut it with a katana. Yuki coughs. Her mom looks confused. Her dad finally speaks again, slowly this time. He repeats the question. I catch a few more words, neon, ikamashita, and itsu. Okay. I think I got it. He's asking if I've ever been to Japan and when. I respond, triumphantly, hi. Sushi wa totomosuki desu. Translation, yes. I like sushi very much. More silence. Yuki covers her face with her hands. Her dad finally switches to English. You don't speak Japanese, he says flatly. I crack. I come clean. I admit I lied because I was nervous and wanted to impress him. He nods once, then takes a sip of sake like he expected this all along. Dinner continues. In English. Her dad says very little, but when we leave, he tells Yuki something I don't catch. She translates for me later in the car. He said, at least he didn't pretend too long. I thought that would be the end of it. But no. 2 weeks later, Yuki's cousin gets married. Full Japanese ceremony. Her dad brings it up to every relative he can find. I'm introduced as the one who said he wants to eat when asked about Japan. It's become a running joke in the family. Yuki even got me a t-shirt for my birthday that says thei in bold kanji. On the plus side, I've actually started studying Japanese seriously now. Out of shame. Nothing motivates like humiliation. And now, whenever someone asks me if I speak Japanese, I say, with absolute honesty, not yet, but I'm learning. The real kicker? Her dad actually seems to like me more now. He told me, in English, "Thank God you make mistakes. But you showed up." I'll take that as a win. But still. thei TIFU by accidentally joining a cult because I just wanted free Wi-Fi and coffee, so this happened a few years ago, but I still wake up sometimes with secondhand embarrassment and mild existential dread over it. It started when I was between jobs, freshly dumped, and living out of a crappy studio apartment that used to be a dentist's office. The landlord swore that the random sink in the middle of the room gave the place character. What it gave me was a daily reminder that I was brushing my teeth where someone probably got their wisdom teeth yanked. Anyway, I was broke. Like, rationing ramen broke. My internet got cut off, and I'd been spending hours at the local library just to check emails and apply for jobs. But the library closed early on weekends, and I needed a place to hide from the crushing weight of my existence and also maybe steal some Wi-Fi. Entered the Center for Radiant Living. I saw a flyer on a community bulletin board. It promised free coffee, free Wi-Fi, and open-minded discussions with enlightened people. I figured it was some kind of hippie co-working space or maybe a meetup group for philosophy nerds. I didn't care. Free coffee and internet were all I needed. So I show up on a Sunday morning, dressed in my most neutral outfit to avoid looking too desperate or like a narc. The place was in a weird part of town, an old church that had been repainted in what I can only describe as sunset vomit, with swirling oranges, purples, and way too many inspirational quotes stenciled onto the walls. There were beanbags. There were dream catchers. There was a man playing a flute made out of a gourd. But the Wi-Fi was fast and the coffee was organic. I figured I'd hang out for an hour, get some work done, and bounce before anyone tried to make me buy crystals. Big mistake. A woman named Fern, of course her name was Fern, introduced herself to me like I was a long-lost cousin. She asked about my journey and offered me a cleansing or a tea. I told her I just wanted black coffee and the Wi-Fi password. She smiled like I had said something deeply profound. Before I knew it, I was being ushered into a circle of chairs. Apparently, Sunday mornings were communal introspection hour, and new guests were honored with the talking stones so they could share their truths. Someone literally handed me a rock with glitter glued on it. Not wanting to be rude, and still thinking I could dip out soon, I mumbled something about being in between jobs and going through a rough time. That was all it took. People started nodding in unison like they were feeling my pain telepathically. Someone offered me a life frequency realignment session. Another person handed me a pamphlet titled Ascend Your Trauma Through Inner Light. But again, the coffee was good. The Wi-Fi was fast. And I'm weak. So I came back the next Sunday. And the next. Every week, I told myself it would be the last. But it was quiet, warm, and better than being alone in my sink apartment. Over time, I learned everyone had weird names like River, Blaze, Juniper, or Silent Thomas. I became Brother Max. My name isn't Max, because the group decided that was more harmonious with their energy grid. They started giving me assignments. At first, it was simple stuff like rearranging chairs or passing out gratitokens, smooth stones with random words like bliss and moisture etched on them. Then came the weekend retreats. I said I couldn't afford it, but they told me I'd earned a full passage sponsorship. Next thing I knew, I was barefoot in a forest, screaming my primal frequency into the void with 30 other adults, while someone named Eaglefire beat a drum and chanted about shedding emotional skin. The turning point came during the initiation of release, which took place in a yurt, of course. They asked me to renounce my previous shell identity and fully embrace my radiant self. This included choosing a new name, cutting a piece of my hair, and participating in a sacred dance of rebirth involving lavender oil and interpretive squatting. I panicked. My survival instinct kicked in, and I faked a phone call from my dying aunt. I bolted from the yurt, sprinted barefoot through the forest, and didn't stop until I found a gas station where a confused cashier let me use their phone. I ghosted the cult. Changed my number. Moved apartments. Even got a new job. But for months, I kept seeing those same flyers pop up around town. Join us. Find peace. Free coffee. I still don't know if it was an actual cult or just an aggressively weird meetup group, but I do know that every time I see a dreamcatcher now, my body instinctively tenses and I smell patchouli. And the worst part? The coffee really was amazing. TIFU by pretending to be fluent in Spanish to impress a girl and accidentally getting roped into a cartel family reunion. Let me start by saying I'm not completely clueless when it comes to Spanish. I took 4 years in high school and I can order tacos and ask where the bathroom is, but that's about the extent of my ability. The problem is, I told a girl I met on a dating app that I was fluent. Let's rewind to a few weeks ago. I matched with this gorgeous woman named Valentina. Colombian American, lives in my city, works in PR, has the kind of smile that makes you forget how to breathe. Her profile said she was looking for someone who was cultured, fluent in Spanish, and loved family. Now, I could have just been honest. But no. My monkey brain saw fluent in Spanish and decided I can be that guy. I figured I'd learn a few lines, use Google Translate, and hope love would do the rest. We messaged for about a week. I used ChatGPT and Translate to help craft messages that sounded natural. She was impressed. "Your Spanish is amazing," she said. I blushed behind my screen like a fraud. Eventually, she asked if I wanted to meet in person. I said yes, of course. Here's where it begins to spiral. She picks a little Colombian restaurant downtown. I walk in, nervous as hell. We hug, sit down, and the server starts speaking rapid-fire Spanish at us. I panic. I look at Valentina, and she's smiling at me, clearly waiting for me to reply. I blurt out, "Sí, carne por favor." That made no sense in context. I think he asked if we wanted drinks. But Valentina just laughed and said something to him and he walked away. She gave me a look and said, "You're shy with your Spanish in public, huh?" I nodded like a guilty puppy. "Yeah, just rusty." So we go on the date. I deflect and keep things mostly in English, and she doesn't push it. But then she drops the bomb. "Hey, my family's having a big get-together this weekend. Tons of food, music, everyone speaking Spanish. You should come." I should have backed out. Made an excuse. Faked my death. But no, I say, that sounds amazing. Fast forward to Saturday. We drive out to what I assumed would be a house party. Nope. It's a ranch. A literal ranch, like with gates and horses and a mariachi band warming up in the front. People are everywhere, grilling, dancing, laughing. Valentina grabs my hand and starts introducing me. Everyone is speaking Spanish. Everyone. I do my best. I nod a lot. I say mucho gusto to everyone. I say sí way too often. I accidentally told her aunt that I was pregnant when I meant to say I was full. Her dad, a tall, intimidating man in cowboy boots and a huge belt buckle, sits me down and starts asking me questions in rapid Spanish. I catch maybe 5% of it. I laugh nervously and say claro, claro, of course, to everything. Big mistake. Apparently, I agreed to help with some business tomorrow. That night, Valentina and I stay over in a guest house on the property. She's super happy. I'm in full-blown panic. I open Google Translate and desperately try to figure out what I committed to. All I remember is the phrase trabajo mañana and something about camions. Trucks? The next morning, I get woken up at 6:30 by one of her cousins banging on the door. Vámonos, gringo. I get in a truck with 3 of her relatives. No one explains anything. They hand me gloves and a radio. I ask where we're going, and they all laugh like I told the funniest joke. We drive 2 hours into the hills to what looks like a small warehouse. It's surrounded by more guys, all speaking Spanish. I'm sweating through my shirt. I'm convinced I'm about to witness or participate in something illegal. Am I a mule? Did I agree to be a mule? Then it hits me, I can't even explain myself if something goes wrong. If the cops show up, I'm just the dumbass gringo who nodded his way into a federal indictment. One of the cousins shouts "Vamos," and everyone starts unloading crates. I peek inside. Bananas. Just bananas. Okay, fine. Weird amount of bananas, but maybe it's a legit fruit delivery. I start helping, trying to look like I belong. At one point, I accidentally knock over a crate and out spills not bananas, but stacks of vacuum-sealed packages. White powder. I freeze. Everyone freezes. Then they all burst out laughing. One guy picks up the package, tears it open, and dumps it into his mouth. Powdered sugar. It's powdered sugar. Apparently, they run a legit and legal dessert business that supplies churros and pastries to dozens of restaurants. The crates were ingredients. The entire operation is above board. The family just has a very dramatic sense of humor. I'm still shaking as we drive back. Valentina runs up to me when I get out of the truck. How was it? I smile like I've seen the face of death and lived. Great. Learned a lot. Later that evening, as we're sitting around the fire, her father pulls me aside and says, in perfect English, "You know, we figured out on the first night you didn't really speak Spanish." I blink. He grins. But you tried. That counts for something. So, yeah. I faked being fluent in Spanish, accidentally joined a Cho cartel for a day, and learned that honesty really is the best policy. Still dating Valentina, though. Now I'm actually learning Spanish, for real this time. TIFU by accidentally sending a video of myself crying in the shower to my entire department. So this happened last Thursday and I've only just stopped wanting to evaporate into mist. I work for a mid-sized marketing agency in Chicago. It's one of those places with an open culture, which is a fancy way of saying we overshare in Slack and do trust falls twice a year. Anyway, Thursday morning started off horribly. I was already running late because my alarm didn't go off. My cat had thrown up in my shoes, both, and I had a video meeting at 9 a.m. with my whole department, like 30 people, plus our new director who just transferred from the New York office. This guy is sleek, intimidating, and uses words like synergize with a straight face. Now, for context, I've been under a lot of stress. Personal stuff, family stuff, financial stuff, your classic millennial chaos casserole. I've also been in therapy, highly recommend, and one of the things my therapist suggested was emotional vulnerability exercises, which included journaling or even filming myself during moments of high emotion to help process them. Sounds weird, but it's been kind of working. So Wednesday night, I had a full-on meltdown. Just complete emotional collapse. I found myself sitting on the floor of my shower with water pouring down, sobbing uncontrollably. I thought, well, might as well journal this like Dr. Karen says, and I set my phone up on the little shower ledge to record a video. I recorded myself talking through everything, my fears, frustrations, ugly crying and all. Very raw, very real, very, not something anyone else should ever see. I never intended to do anything with it. I figured I'd maybe watch it later and cry less or something. But I must have left it in my camera roll and totally forgot about it. Fast forward to Thursday. I'm panicking about the meeting and trying to be a model employee, so I decide to be proactive and submit my campaign pitch slides to the team Slack ahead of time. Our channel allows file uploads, and I drag and drop what I think is my PowerPoint into the chat. Only it's not my PowerPoint. It is the shower video. The full, 6-minute and 43-second video of me in the fetal position on tile, sobbing and monologuing about my life like a rejected Netflix special. And I didn't just send it to my boss. I sent it to the entire department channel. That channel includes my direct manager, my peers, HR, and our terrifying new director from New York who once fired someone for not capitalizing Q2 in a deck. Panic doesn't even begin to describe what I felt. I stared in silent horror for a full 5 seconds, hoping maybe my computer had glitched or maybe this was all a hallucination brought on by excessive caffeine and emotional instability. But no. The video started autoplaying. Slack helpfully displayed a large preview of me looking like a drowned raccoon. I scrambled to delete it, but you know Slack, once it's out there, it's out there. People had already seen it. I got a DM from my work buddy Jess that just said, are you okay? Then from my boss, hey, not sure if that upload was intentional? Want to talk? And then the worst, a message from Mr. Synergy himself, the new director. It said, that was unexpected. If you need resources, we have EAP available. Let's connect later. Connect later? What was I, a damaged Roomba? I immediately logged out of Slack, closed my laptop, and went to lie face down on my bed, hoping I could somehow die through sheer force of will. After about an hour of staring into the void and contemplating whether I could fake my own death and move to Peru, I got a call from HR, lovely Karen from HR who always talks to you like she's about to offer you herbal tea or a termination letter. She was very gentle, told me it was okay, and that everyone makes mistakes. She even said some people were really concerned and that it was a powerful moment of honesty. That somehow made it worse. The thought of Steve from accounting watching my emotional breakdown in 1080p was nauseating. The company ended up giving me the rest of the day off and even offered a few extra mental health days. In a strange twist of fate, several coworkers reached out with genuinely supportive messages. One guy I barely knew admitted he'd also been struggling and was grateful to feel less alone. Jess told me she cried watching it and thought I was brave as hell. My manager said she admired the vulnerability, which I think HR made her say, but still. Now it's been a few days. The video has been scrubbed from the channel, thank God for Slack admin powers, but of course it lives on in memory, probably forever. People are mostly pretending it never happened, except for Jess, who now refers to me as Emo Aquaman. So yeah. That's how I accidentally became the poster child for corporate mental health vulnerability by sending my private shower crying breakdown video to 30 of my professional peers. On the bright side, no one's asked me to come up with Q3 campaign slogans yet. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.